Living in our old broken house felt like being trapped in a nightmare. My parents, Dean and Lana, controlled everything. They hurt us, starved us, and made our lives miserable. There were 13 of us, and we were all scared and weak. I'm Jolie, 17 years old, and this is my story. In the dim light of our room, Jessie and I would whisper about escaping, planning every detail as quietly as we could. Jessie was older and wiser, and she knew we needed a solid plan. She told me about the old phone hidden in our parents' room, which we could use to call 911 for help and prove what was happening to us. Then sneak into their room to find the phone. It was risky, but we had no choice. We decided to wait until our parents were asleep. That night, Jessie and I moved as quietly as we could, our hearts pounding in our chests. When we reached the door of our parents' room, Jessie paused to listen, her ear pressed against the wood. The rhythmic sound of their breathing reassured us that they were asleep. With a deep breath, Jessie slowly turned the door handle. The door creaked open just enough for us to slip through. Inside, the room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of a nightlight near their bed. Our parents lay in their bed, their snores filling the room with a heavy, rhythmic noise. My heart was beating so fast. I was afraid they would hear us. I felt a cold sweat on my brow as we approached the nightstand. Jessie reached inside, her fingers trembling slightly, and finally found the phone. She pulled it out and held it tightly, her face a mix of relief and anxiety. But then we found something else. Pictures of us with bruises and chains. The photos we found in our parents' room were horrifying. One photo was of my younger brother. His wrists were red and swollen from the chains our parents had used to restrain him. Another photo captured the deep purple bruises on my sister's arm, evidence of the many times she'd been hit. These pictures showed how they hurt us. We knew we needed these to show the police. As we quietly left the room with the phone and the pictures, my heart pounded in my chest. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump, and I felt like the walls themselves were watching us. My hands were shaking. I held the photos tightly, knowing they were our only proof of the abuse. I felt a mix of hope and dread. Hope that we might finally be free, and dread at the thought of what would happen if we were caught. We made it to the living room, where Jessie quickly dialed 911. When the voice answered, it felt like a lifeline. 911, what's your emergency? The person asked. We need help, Jessie whispered. Our parents are hurting us. There are 13 of us, and we're not safe. Just then, we heard a noise. Our father was awake. He stormed into the room, looking angrier than ever. What are you doing? He shouted, coming toward us. Jessie pushed me behind her, trying to protect me. I was frozen with fear, but Jessie's words snapped me out of it. She handed me the phone. Our father grabbed Jessie, and she screamed. I wanted to help, but I knew I had to go. I ran out of the house, my heart breaking because I was leaving Jessie behind. I ran down the street, not knowing where to go. Finally, I stopped and called 911 again. Please help us, I cried. My dad found out. My sister is still in there and she's in danger. The person on the phone told me to stay calm and wait for the police. As I stood outside, trembling and clutching the phone, the sound of police sirens grew louder. Finally, the flashing lights of the police car appeared, and a police officer got out and approached me. Yes, I'm Jolie, I stammered, my voice shaky. My sister and I, we need help. Our parents are hurting us and our siblings. The officer frowned, studying me closely. I could tell he wasn't sure if he believed me. I knew I looked a mess. Thin, pale, and scared. He stared at me and said sternly, "Look, kids sometimes make up stories to get attention. Are you sure you're telling the truth? We need to be sure before we do anything." Panic surged through me. If he didn't believe me, we were doomed. I remembered the pictures we had taken from my parents' room. I quickly pulled them out from under my shirt where I had hidden them and handed them to the officer. "These are real," I said, my voice choking with emotion. "They did this to us. Please, sir, you have to believe me." The officer took the photos and looked at them. His expression changed from doubt to shock as he saw the images of bruises, chains, and other signs of abuse. He flipped through the pictures, his eyes widening with each one. "I'm so sorry, kid. We're going to take care of this right now." He called for backup on his radio, explaining the situation quickly. Then he turned back to me and put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You're very brave," he said. "Don't worry. We're going to help you and your siblings out." The officers rushed to the house. I stood outside shaking and crying, worried about Jessie. After what felt like a long time, I saw them bringing Jessie out. She looked tired and scared, but she was alive. Our parents were arrested and I felt a mix of relief and sadness. We were free from the nightmare, but it came at a cost. Jessie had risked everything to save us. We hugged tightly, knowing we had a long road ahead to recover from everything we had been through.
This is my first night shift at G-Zoo. My usual job is to observe and take care of the animals here at night. To be honest, this job is quite boring. I just sit in front of a screen and watch them sit, stand, or walk around for hours. I look forward to 8 o'clock so I can feed them. At least I get to go outside and breathe some fresh air. It's strange that there are no other staff here besides me. Maybe not many people are willing to work the night shift. But for me, I agreed because it's an easy job with good pay. Somehow, today the deers look more energetic than usual, constantly hopping around. Hey Tiger growled and the camera No 8 went off, startling me a little. It's probably hungry, time to feed them. Both my hands are carrying heavy buckets of meat. I take the food to the tiger and toss them some red meat. But the tiger just lies there, not even bothering to eat. I get closer and see the tiger lying on its back in a strange position. I smell the stench of blood and start to feel uneasy. I try to stay calm, but it's too dark to tell if the black stripes on its skin are blood or not. Then I notice small bite marks on its lower belly. Suddenly, I hear the sound of banging on the enclosure door and the screeching of the gorillas. I immediately run over, thinking the situation there might be more serious. I run over to the gorilla enclosure. One of them is writhing on the ground, while the other two look terrified. I approach the cage, open the door, and step inside. The writhing gorilla starts to mutate, growing 2 sharp legs on either side of its back, like spider legs. Its teeth are razor sharp, and its green eyes gleam with madness. Then it lunges at me. Fortunately or unfortunately, another gorilla jumps over and takes the bite from the mutated gorilla instead of me. I stagger back, in shock and unsure of what to do. The bitten gorilla starts to mutate as well. Its body swells unnaturally, and its limbs sprout extra fingers with long, sharp claws. The sight is nightmarish. Seeing the madness in the gorilla's eyes, I knew I was facing something far beyond my control. I quickly run out of the enclosure, locking it behind me. The mutated gorillas rush to the door and trying to grab me, but I step back, just in time. Their strength is no joke. This enclosure won't hold them for long if they keep ramming into it like this. When I first saw the tiger lying there, I sensed something was wrong, but I never imagined things would get this bad. I realize I can't handle this situation alone. I need to report this to Dr. Morgan. I never thought this job could become so horrifying. The sounds of banging and screeching behind me and the haunting green eyes make me feel like I'm trapped in a horror movie. I burst into the lab, breathless and desperate. Dr. Morgan, the gorillas, they've escaped. Dr. Morgan looks up from her work, her face pale. We need to act fast. The vaccine isn't ready, but we can slow the mutation process. We grab as many vaccine vials as we can and head out into the zoo. The plan is to inject to the animals and hope for the best. But as we step outside, the scene that greets us is a nightmare. The animals have escaped their enclosures, and their mutations are more evident than ever. The giraffes' necks twist like snakes. The limbs of the crocodile became larger, sturdier, and elongated, making it move faster. From both sides of the elephant's neck, tentacles of an octopus began to sprout, moving eerily through the air. The gorillas are the worst. They move with terrifying speed and agility, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intelligence. We split up, trying to cover as much ground as possible. I head toward the zebra enclosure, hoping to inject the vaccine into them before they mutate further. The zebra's stripes swirl into chaotic patterns, their bodies twisted and contorted. I give an injection to the first zebra, hoping the vaccine will take effect quickly. But as I move to the next one, I feel a sharp pain in my leg. I look down and see a deer who has mutated with its claws digging into my skin. I scream and kick it away, but it is already damaged. I can feel the mutation process starting. I inject myself with a dose of the vaccine, praying it will work. The pain is excruciating, my vision blurs, and I stagger, falling to the ground. I try to stay calm, but the fear keeps rising within me. And as I feel the mutation process beginning in my body, I know this fight is beyond my control. I know my time is running out. Dr. Morgan's voice comes through the talkie like a faint glimmer of hope. Paul, hold on, we'll fix this. But I know it's too late for me. All I can do is hope that the others can stop this epidemic before it spreads further. The last thing I see before everything goes dark is the zoo in chaos. The mutated animals causing havoc and Dr. Morgan's desperate face. The silence of the night is shattered by the sounds of chaos and horror. And I know I've become part of a nightmare with no escape.
We got the distress signal at 3 a.m. It woke me from a deep sleep, the shrill beeping echoing in my ears. Bobby, Kim, and I stumbled to the control room where the radio was flashing urgently.
Distress signal from a yacht?
Bobby said, his voice tense.
Registered to a Daniel Owens. No other information.
All right, I said, adrenaline kicking in. Let's gear up. By 3:10 a.m., we were cutting across the waves in our rescue boat, surrounded by the darkness of the ocean. The only light came from our headlamp, piercing the pitch-black night. The weather was clear, but I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to Daniel and his friends, since it had been a long time since we'd received an SOS without a storm.
Who knows with these rich folks?
Kim said.
They do all kinds of weird stuff.
The ocean loomed ahead of us, pure darkness in every direction. I glanced back, seeing the lights from the dock getting smaller and smaller, eventually swallowed by the void. We reached the yacht by 3:20 a.m. It was a massive vessel, about 50 or 60 feet long, reflecting eerily in the inky black water. Bobby shifted gears and we pulled up alongside it. Slowly, quietly, Bobby grabbed the megaphone.
U.S. Coast Guard.
He called out.
Can you hear us?
Silence. Kim and I started with the rope securing our boat to the yacht. As we worked, I kept glancing up at the yacht. I didn't see any damage to the boat or people in the water. Kim boarded first. I followed while Bobby stayed in our boat, preparing to search the surrounding water. I swallowed hard and stepped inside. The doors opened into a small but lavishly decorated room. To the right, a bar area stood, and to the left a dining area with tables and booths. The tables were set with food as if people had just been there moments before. Glasses of champagne still bubbling, a fillet of salmon a few bites missing, lipstick smeared on a napkin. I looked at my watch. 3:25 a.m. They'd sent the SOS not even 20 minutes ago. How did they go from eating and drinking to just nothing? Kim walked over, her face pale.
I checked below deck, no one's there.
The food's still warm, I said, my voice shaky. Her eyes widened.
What the hell? Where did they go?
I suggested to check the top deck. We made our way to the stairs, moving cautiously. The top deck was open to the air. I glanced at the captain's chair, the steering wheel, and the little U-shaped sofa behind them. It was empty. They're not here, that's for sure. They've got to be in the water. I looked out over the railing, into the black water below. I turned, looking around the boat, scanning the water. My heart stopped. Where's Bobby? Our boat was still linked with the yacht, but it was empty.
He must have boarded.
Kim snapped, charging for the stairs.
He never follows protocol. I always tell him it's going to get someone killed, but no, he just has to do things his way.
Her rant grew muffled as she descended towards the deck. I followed her, but Bobby wasn't downstairs. He wasn't in the dining area or in either of the bedrooms below deck. I checked tiny closets that couldn't possibly fit a person. Then opened the storage cabins that held the life jackets. Bobby, where are you? A hand clamped over my mouth. Something shoved me to the floor. I tried to wrestle away, but then I saw a flash of red curls above me. Kim. She was dragging me under the table, whispering, begging me to keep quiet. Shh. Squelch. Both of us froze. I slightly glanced up. Bobby was standing there in the center of the room, but something was horribly wrong with him. He was soaking wet from head to toe. Seawater sloshed in his boots. Streams of water ran off his sleeves. His face was pale and sickly, with his forehead swollen unnaturally, almost sagging downwards. And his eyes, they were pure white, pupilless, blank. Squelch. Bobby took another step. Squelch. And another. Kim's nails dug into my arm. We watched as Bobby, no, not Bobby, not anymore, continued walking towards us. I held my breath, shutting my eyes. Please don't let him see us. Please. Squelch. 2 rubber boots, right in front of our table. Squelch. He continued deeper into the cabin. I let out the breath I was holding. Kim's grip on my arm loosened. As soon as Bobby's steps sounded on the stairs, Kim whispered to me,
Run!
I didn't want to, but then she shoved me hard and I was rolling out from under the table. I scrambled up just in time to see Bobby freeze on the stairs. He slowly turned around, his white eyes locking on mine. I ran, faster than I'd run in my life. We scrambled out onto the deck, then made our way into the boat as fast as we could. Kim made it first. Then she grabbed my hand, pulling me towards safety. Squelch. Bobby's hand locked onto my ankle, except they weren't just hands. His fingers were jointless like tentacles wrapping perfectly around my ankle, covered in fleshy suction cups. And his face, it was rapidly changing. Before my eyes, his flesh twisted and bloated into different forms, until I saw a woman, then an older man. This is how I die. But then a massive wave crashed over us, flipping the boat 90 degrees, and everything fell into the sea. Back home, I was so relieved, so thankful. Whatever that thing was, I'd escaped it. I felt better than I had in years. Like all my problems were tiny grains of sand, but now I'm not so sure.